This is the note card I am using today. So today we'll be going over some of the joints in the upper limb, and I'll be using this dissected chicken wing here as a visual aid. And the chicken wing as a whole is analogous with the arm in humans. The main attraction for today is the elbow joint, again formed by the humerus, radius up here, and ulna. And the elbow joint is a monoaxial hinge joint. It assists us in flexion and extension of the forearm. It is a synovial joint, of course. The articular cartilage is clearly viewable here as these white shiny surfaces. The elbow joint is actually composed kind of two joints. So we have the humeral radial joint, which is the capitulum of the humerus articulating with the head of the radius, as well as the humeral ulnar joint, which is the trochlea of the humerus articulating with the trochlear fossa of the olecranon of the ulna. So those are where you're going to see that cartilage, because the articular cartilage assists in shock absorption and friction reduction. So we do not want the bony surfaces of our long bones to actually come in contact with each other. They're very innervated. That would be very painful. So this helps keep those surfaces from direct contact. Additionally, we can, like I mentioned, this is a pretty intact specimen I have. You can see some of the dense connective tissue forming the articular capsule, which is the outer protective layer of the joint, within which you'll find the synovial membrane, kind of shiny and drying up at the moment. That secretes synovial fluid, which is key in lubrication, specifically because it contains hyaluronan and lubricin. It is also essential in nutrient, waste, and gas distribution across the joint, as well as additional shock absorption. Synovial joints are considered weak joints, so because the more movement you have in a joint, the weaker the actual integrity of the joint can be. So they are predisposed to quite a few issues that can develop. In veterinary medicine, elbow dysplasia in dogs is something we commonly see in large and giant breed dogs. This is a developmental issue where the three bones of the elbow joint do not properly align and don't properly fit together. So this is due to some growth abnormalities. Some of those abnormalities can include a shortened radius, so that makes the joint surfaces incongruous. You can also have osteochondritis dissecans, which presents as a thickened flap of cartilage on the humeral trochlea. You could have a fragmented coronoid process or an ununited ankylonial process on the ulna, all of which would result in an uneven weight distribution across the joint. So eventually this would lead to very painful cartilage loss, progressive arthritis, and eventual lameness in dogs. So we don't quite know exactly what is the direct cause of canine elbow dysplasia, but we do know that genetics, trauma, or insult to the long bones, as well as diet play key roles. I personally have a black lab mixed puppy, and so I'm very careful to monitor his body condition and weight, the ratio of phosphorus and calcium in his diet, as well as to limit his engagement in high impact activity while he's still in that developmental phase prior to the closure of his epiphyseal plates. I think in the future, as breeding standards and owner education improve, we'll hopefully see limited cases. Thank you. I did want to note a few other joints present here. So these are, the first three are synovial joints or diarthroses. This means that they're freely movable joints. The fourth is an amphiarthrosis, which is a joint that provides limited movement. I was very lucky to have a chicken wing that is very intact. Usually when you get these, you'll see that the head of the humerus actually isn't present, but here you can actually see the articular cartilage of the head of the humerus. This would form half of the ball and socket, specifically the ball part of the glenohumeral joint, so the other half being, of course, the scapula, and specifically the glenoid cavity of the scapula articulating here to form the shoulder joint. That would be considered a triaxial joint, so allowing full range of motion. Next, we also can note the two radial ulnar joints. So the proximal radial ulnar joint is formed by the head of the radius articulating with the radial notch of the ulna, as well as down at the wrist, we have the distal radial ulnar joint. That is the head of the ulna articulating with the ulnar notch of the radius. Those are really essential in pronation and supination of the forearm. And then the final, as I mentioned, the amphiarthroses. It's not quite intact, but you can kind of see this silvery film somewhat connecting the radius and ulna in the specimen. That is the interosseous membrane connecting those two bones. It's also called a syndesmosis.